Kang Haesang sneaked into Chairman Choi Chun-baek's son's funeral, following Choi Chun-baek all the way to the elevator. However, Choi Chun-baek didn't notice anything until he turned his head and stared at him. What followed was a bloody fight. Although the bodyguard was fierce, Kang Haesang was the kind who wasn't afraid of death. He steadied his stance, drew the dagger, and stabbed the bodyguard in the neck. The bodyguard's legs weakened instantly, and he collapsed. Kang Haesang then wildly stabbed the bodyguard's chest. His vicious gaze left Choi Chun-baek utterly terrified. Within just 1 minute, when the elevator doors reopened, all that people could see was a pool of blood and the bodyguard's lifeless body. Soon, Choi Chun-baek's wife contacted the police. Kang Haesang sent a videotape showing Choi Chun-baek not only beaten with blood covering his head but also having one of his fingers chopped off. Even the police were shocked by Kang Haesang's brutality. To rescue the hostage quickly, the police set up surveillance devices and reminded the woman not to rush during negotiations. They insisted on meeting for the transaction. Soon the call came, and Kang Haesang, as cunning as ever, told them to follow his orders, but the woman's response shocked everyone. The captain, Ma Dongseok, was furious at the moment, but the woman had seen it all before, with her son's death as a painful lesson. She was sure that Kang Haesang was after the money. She raised the stakes and arranged a face-to-face negotiation. Through sharp bargaining, she saved her husband's life and regained control of the situation. Before Kang Haesang could finish speaking, she hung up the phone, showing complete dominance. After the negotiation, the woman finally broke down, covering her face and sobbing softly. But soon, she pulled herself together. She had already lost her son and couldn't afford to lose her husband. Soon, the police and criminals began to tighten their preparations. However, a new problem emerged. Ma Dongseok had previously crossed paths with Kang Haesang in Vietnam. Kang Haesang recognized the police officers, so to avoid tipping him off, Ma Dongseok sought help from a local named Old Dang. Without waiting for a response, Ma Dongseok pulled him in to act as a driver and ensure the woman's safety. While deploying several vehicles for tracking, another team of police was sent to search for the hostage's hiding place. The police were racing against time, but Kang Haesang wasn't idle either. After assigning a route to his men, he stayed hidden, remotely directing the operation. As the action started, Kang Haesang's men tailed the car. Meanwhile, a disguised police van was also on their trail. The thugs were highly alert. Suddenly, they braked to test if they were being followed. To avoid being detected, the van continued ahead. Just as they were about to reach the transaction point, Kang Haesang called and ordered them to turn around. Helplessly, they complied, and the kidnappers continued to follow closely. Kang Haesang's cunning kept the police on their toes. Fortunately, on the other side, the police had found Choi Chun-baek's car. They entered an abandoned factory to search and soon found the barely alive Choi Chun-baek. Just when they were about to rescue him, Kang Haesang quietly appeared and stabbed the officer. As he was about to silence him, reinforcements arrived just in time. Sensing the situation was exposed, Kang Haesang quickly fled by car. On the way, he notified his men to abort the mission. However, the lure of wealth was too great. Kang Haesang's men, motivated by greed, refused to give up and cursed him for backing out. They decided to keep the ransom for themselves. Enraged, Kang Haesang shouted, "Fine, fine, you want to play like this? Just wait and see." Meanwhile, Ma Dongseok learned that his teammate had been severely injured during the rescue. Upon hearing that Kang Haesang had stabbed his colleague, Ma Dongseok's anger reached its peak, and he immediately ordered a manhunt. To their surprise, the kidnappers were quicker. They intercepted the woman's car, but the undercover police had already surrounded them. At this moment, something unexpected happened. Old Deng performed a sudden reverse drift and sped away. The kidnappers didn't back down and gave chase. Along the way, Old Deng learned that the trunk held $2 million. Tempted by greed, Old Deng ignored Ma Dongseok's orders and fled into an underground parking lot in panic. In the chaos, the kidnapper's car was hit by a passerby, giving Old Deng a chance. He tricked the woman into fleeing into the mall while he drove off with the ransom. The two kidnappers split up, one going after the money, the other after the woman. This time, accelerating before hitting the brakes suddenly, the thug was knocked unconscious. Old Deng ignored the police's warnings and kept fleeing with the ransom. Just as he thought his freedom was within reach, a car came speeding towards him, crashing his vehicle into a barrier. Panicking, Old Deng grabbed the ransom and ran. Kang Haesang, chasing with all his might, was still one step behind. Seeing his ransom snatched, Kang Haesang's rage reached its limit. He took out his anger on the approaching police officers. Feeling rich at last, Old Deng finally had his moment of glory. Meanwhile, the woman had already been caught by the kidnappers. Just as they were about to kill her, Ma Dongseok appeared. With one swift move, he disarmed the kidnapper. The kidnapper quickly switched to a knife, but Ma Dongseok dodged it and, with another quick strike, knocked the thug down the elevator shaft. The kidnapper struggled to get back on his feet, trying to escape, but unfortunately, it was an upward elevator with no way out. He still wanted to fight for his life, but Ma Dongseok delivered a knockout punch. After the incident, the media issued a nationwide manhunt for Old Dang in Kang Haesang. Just as Old Dang was about to escape overseas, Kang Haesang caught up with him. Old Dang immediately pulled out a dagger and shouted, full of confidence. Kang Haesang couldn't even be bothered to respond. He slowly drew out his machete. Old Dang's expression instantly changed, and he threw down his knife, surrendering with his hands raised. Seeing the fortune in front of him, Old Dang felt deeply unsatisfied, but since he couldn't win a fight against Kang Haesang, he had no choice but to retreat. Still unwilling, Old Dang secretly followed Kang Haesang. When he saw Kang Haesang get on a bus, Old Dang immediately called Ma Dongseok to make up for his previous mistakes. If I can't have it, neither can you, Old Dang thought. Soon, the bus was stopped in a tunnel, and Ma Dongseok was the one blocking it. After evacuating the passengers, Ma Dongseok shut the bus doors, and Kang Haesang looked irritated. He was so close to escaping, so he tried to bribe Ma Dongseok. But Ma Dongseok only gave him a contemptuous smile. Then he took off his belt and wrapped it around his hand. This time, let's see where you'll run. What looked like it would be a fierce battle turned into a mismatch between an assassin and a tank. Kang Haesang's strength was no match for Ma Dongseok's brute force. In the end, Ma Dongseok landed a powerful side kick, finishing him off perfectly. Facing such a villain, Ma Dongseok was clearly not satisfied. He grabbed Kang Haesang by the hair, landed a heavy punch, and threw him aside. Kang Haesang staggered to his feet, roaring in frustration and weakness. But it was mostly due to his defiance and unwillingness to admit defeat. After all, who told him to mess with a true Korean man? As the police car slowly approached, Ma Dongseok finally realized he had damaged public property again. He quickly handed the mess over to his colleagues and walked away coolly.